The scream tore through the mansion at 3 a.m. Not the scream of pain. Not the scream of fear. The scream of a mother who'd finally had enough. I can't do this anymore. 7-year-old Clarice Corleone lay frozen in her bed. Not from shock, but because her legs hadn't worked in 8 months. Her small hands clutched the silk sheets as her mother's voice shattered the night like breaking glass. She's your burden now, Adrian. I didn't sign up to be a nurse. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And hey, if this story already has your heart racing, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this goes. Now, let me take you back to that night. The night everything changed. Clarice pressed her face into the pillow, trying to drown out the sound of suitcase wheels rolling across marble floors. She knew that sound. She'd heard it twice before. When Mama went to Paris, when Mama went to Milan. But those times Mama came back. This time felt different. Through her bedroom door, left carelessly ajar, she could see her mother, Vivienne Corleone, dragging a Louis Vuitton trunk toward the grand staircase. Vivienne's blonde hair was perfectly styled even at this ungodly hour, her designer dress unwrinkled, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was going to a gala, not abandoning her disabled daughter. Adrian Corleone stood at the top of the stairs, his tall frame blocking his wife's path. Even from her bed, Clarice could see her father's shoulders shaking. She'd never seen him cry before. Vivienne, please. She needs her mother. She needs a miracle. Vivienne's laugh was cold, brittle. And I need a life. I'm 32 years old, Adrian. I'm not spending my best years watching a child who can't even walk stare at me with those pathetic eyes. Clarice's breath caught. She looked down at her useless legs beneath the covers. Small, thin, betrayers. The doctors said there might be hope. Adrian's voice cracked. The doctors said maybe. Maybe after years of painful therapy, maybe after experimental treatments, maybe she'll walk again. Vivienne shoved past him. I'm done gambling on maybes. I'm done pretending to be some saint. Find someone else to play nursemaid. The front door slammed so hard that the chandelier in Clarice's room trembled, sending fractured light dancing across her walls like broken promises. Then silence. The kind of silence that feels like drowning. Adrian stood motionless at the top of the stairs for what felt like hours. When he finally moved, his feet carried him not to his daughter's room, but to his study, where Clarice heard the distinct sound of a whiskey bottle being opened. She didn't cry. She'd learned months ago that crying didn't bring her legs back. It didn't make Mama's face soften. It didn't change anything. Instead, she stared at the ceiling and counted the crystals on her chandelier. 147. She knew because she counted them every night, the way other children counted sheep. At crystal number 83, she heard something else. Footsteps. Soft, careful footsteps in the hallway. Her door, which Vivienne had left open in her rush to escape, pushed wider. A face appeared, round, warm, concerned. A woman Clarice had never seen before stood in her doorway, wearing a simple blue dress and an expression that made Clarice's chest ache. It looked like kindness. "Oh, sweetheart," the woman whispered, her voice carrying the gentle lilt of someone who'd grown up singing in church. "You're awake." Clarice said nothing. Strangers always stared at her legs. They always asked, "What happened to you?" With that particular tone, the one that mixed pity with relief that it wasn't their child lying there. But this woman didn't look at her legs. She looked at her eyes. "My name is Tiana Draper," the woman said, stepping into the room with the kind of grace that came from carrying heavy things without complaint. "Your father hired me this afternoon. I'm going to be taking care of you for a while." "My mother," Clarice started, her voice small, "is gone, baby." "I know." Tiana moved closer, and Clarice caught the scent of cocoa butter and something else. Something that smelled like home, though Clarice couldn't remember what home was supposed to smell like anymore. "But you're not alone. Not anymore." Tiana sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in 8 months, someone touched Clarice's hand without flinching, without that flash of discomfort in their eyes. "Can I tell you a secret?" Tiana asked. Clarice nodded, curious despite herself. "I don't believe in giving up on miracles. And I sure as heaven don't believe those legs of yours are done telling their story." Something flickered in Clarice's chest. Something dangerous. "Hope." The doctors said. "Doctors don't know everything, baby. I've seen God do things that would make those doctors fall to their knees." Tiana squeezed her hand gently. But we've got work ahead of us. Hard work. You up for that? Clarice wanted to believe her. But belief was expensive, and she'd spent all her currency on prayers that went unanswered. Why would you help me? Clarice whispered. You don't even know me. Tiana's smile was sad and beautiful all at once. Because somebody helped me once when I had nothing, when I thought I was nothing, and I promised God that if he gave me a chance, I'd spend the rest of my life giving chances to others. She stood, smoothing the covers over Clarice's legs with a tenderness that made the little girl's throat tight. Now you get some sleep. Tomorrow we start fighting. As Tiana moved toward the door, Clarice found her voice again. Miss Tiana? Yes, baby. Do you really think I could walk again? Tiana turned, and in the dim light from the hallway, her eyes shone with something fierce and unshakable. I think the woman who gave birth to you didn't know what she was giving up, and I think you're about to prove her wrong in ways that'll shake this whole house. The door closed softly, leaving Clarice alone with a feeling she hadn't experienced in months. Not hope, exactly, but something close. Something that felt like the moment before sunrise, when the sky holds its breath and the world waits to be remade. What Clarice didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Tiana Draper wasn't just a maid. She was a woman with secrets of her own. And in 2 weeks, while cleaning Adrian's study in the dead of night, she would find a letter that would change everything. A letter that had been hidden for a reason. A letter that someone very powerful didn't want found. Have you ever felt abandoned by someone who was supposed to love you? Drop a comment and let me know you're not alone. And if you're invested in Clarice's journey, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, what Tiana finds in that study will blow your mind. The mansion felt different with Tiana in it. For 3 days, Clarice watched this stranger move through her life like sunlight through curtains, soft, warm, impossible to ignore. Tiana didn't tiptoe around her disability. She didn't speak in that hushed, pitying tone that made Clarice feel like a dying plant everyone was afraid to touch. Instead, she swept into the room each morning at 7 sharp, threw open the curtains with theatrical flair, and announced, "Good morning, Miss Clarice Corleone. The sun is shining, the birds are confused about why they live in a city, and we've got work to do." It was absurd. It was wonderful. It was the first time Clarice had laughed in 8 months. But Adrian Corleone didn't laugh anymore. Clarice saw him mostly at dinner, a new ritual Tiana had insisted upon. Before Tiana, Clarice ate alone in her room on a tray, like an invalid in a Victorian novel. Now, Tiana somehow convinced Adrian to join them at the long mahogany table. Though he sat at the far end, barely touching his food, staring at his wine glass as if it held answers. He was 41 but looked older. Grief had carved lines around his mouth, shadows beneath his eyes. His dark hair, usually immaculately styled for board meetings and charity galas, now fell across his forehead in unwashed waves. The billionaire CEO who commanded rooms full of sharks now couldn't even command his own attention span. "Mr. Corleone," Tiana said on the 4th evening, her voice cutting through the silence like a warm knife through butter. "Clarice drew a picture today. Want to see?" Adrian's eyes lifted briefly. "That's nice." I said, "Do you want to see it?" Tiana's tone shifted, still respectful, but with an edge that made even Clarice sit up straighter. Adrian blinked, suddenly aware that this employee wasn't like the others who tiptoed around his misery. "Ah, yes. Of course." Tiana nodded at Clarice, who wheeled herself closer in the custom wheelchair Adrian had imported from Germany. She held out a crayon drawing. A house, a sun, 3 stick figures holding hands. "Who are they?" Adrian asked, his voice cracking slightly. Clarice pointed. "That's me. That's Miss Tiana. And that's you." Adrian stared at the picture for a long moment. His hand trembled as he reached for it. "We're holding hands. In my picture, my legs work," Clarice said softly. "And you're not sad anymore." Something broke behind Adrian's eyes. He pressed his fingers against his mouth, and for a terrible moment, Clarice thought he might cry again. But instead, he did something unexpected. He stood, walked the length of the table, and knelt beside her wheelchair. "I'm sorry," he whispered, taking her small hand in his. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I've been lost. But I'm here now. I promise." Tiana, standing in the doorway to the kitchen, smiled and quietly excused herself. Some moments were meant to be private. But as she walked toward the kitchen, her mind wasn't on the tender reunion. It was on what she'd seen that afternoon. Earlier that day, while Clarice napped, Tiana had been dusting the second-floor hallway when she noticed something odd. Adrian's study door, usually locked tight as a vault, stood slightly ajar. She shouldn't have gone in. It wasn't her business. But Tiana Draper had learned long ago that sometimes God opened doors that were meant to stay closed for a reason. And when he did, you paid attention. The study was exactly what you'd expect from a billionaire. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk the size of a small car, windows overlooking the manicured gardens. But what caught Tiana's attention was the family portrait above the fireplace. Adrian, Vivian, and Clarice. Taken maybe 2 years ago, before the accident. Clarice stood between her parents, grinning, wearing a tiny ballet costume. Her legs strong and straight, ready to leap. Tiana's chest tightened. That baby could dance once. She was about to leave when she noticed something else. A section of the bookshelf that didn't quite align with the others. The books there, medical journals, therapy manuals, were covered in dust, as if Adrian couldn't bear to look at them. Behind those books, barely visible, was a small wooden box wedged into the shelf. Tiana's hand moved before her mind could stop it. The box was locked. Of course it was. She carefully returned everything to its place and left the study, her heart hammering. She had no business snooping. She was just the help, a black woman in a white billionaire's house, already walking a tightrope without adding snoop to her resume. But that box haunted her. What was in it? Why hide it? And why were those medical books collecting dust when Clarice needed them most? That night, after tucking Clarice in with a story about a princess who turned her wheelchair into a magical chariot, Tiana returned to her small room in the staff quarters. It wasn't much, a single bed, a dresser, a window overlooking the service entrance. But it was hers, and more importantly, it was safe. After 3 years of sleeping in shelters, church basements, and 1 terrifying month in her car, having a locked door and a clean bed felt like luxury. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Pastor Raymond. "Can I call you?" She texted. The response came immediately. "Always, daughter. Give me 5 minutes." When her phone rang, Tiana answered on the first ring. "Pastor, I need wisdom. Tell me." His voice was warm, familiar. He'd been the one who'd found her 3 years ago, broken and homeless after her ex-husband's debts had destroyed everything. Pastor Raymond had given her hope when she had nothing but rage and despair. Tiana told him about Clarice, about the hidden box, about the feeling in her gut that something wasn't right. "Sounds like you're exactly where God wants you," Pastor Raymond said. "But Tiana, listen to me carefully. Don't go looking for trouble. You're there to help that child, not to solve mysteries. But what if the mystery is helping her? What if there's something in that box that could? Then God will reveal it in his timing, not yours." Tiana sighed. "You always say that. Because it's always true. Pray on it. Wait on it. If you're meant to open that box, the way will be made clear." After they hung up, Tiana knelt beside her bed and prayed. She prayed for Clarice's healing. She prayed for Adrian's broken heart. She prayed for wisdom and patience. But deep in her spirit, she felt something stirring. A knowing. The kind that made her skin prickle and her pulse quicken. That box held secrets. And soon, very soon, those secrets would demand to be known. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in a luxury suite at the Ritz-Carlton Paris, Vivian Corleone sipped champagne and scrolled through her phone. She'd blocked Adrian's number, deleted Clarice's photos, told her friends she was finally free from that nightmare. But tonight, as she prepared for another party with another man whose name she'd forget by morning, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your daughter's new caretaker is asking questions. Thought you should know. A friend." Vivian's hand froze on her champagne glass. Questions? What questions? She'd made sure everything was buried. The letters. The medical reports. The truth about what really happened the day Clarice fell. No one could know. No one could ever know. Her perfectly manicured fingers flew across the screen. "Who is she?" The response came quickly. "Her name is Tiana Draper. Black woman. Mid-30s. Former homeless. Working as a live-in maid. Seems determined." Vivian's jaw clenched. Determined was dangerous. She typed one more message. "Keep watching. And if she gets too close to anything that matters, handle it." 3 dots appeared. Then understood. Vivian drained her champagne and stared at her reflection in the suite's massive mirror. Her perfect face. Her perfect hair. Her perfect lie. She'd burned down her old life to build this new one. And she'd burn down anyone who tried to resurrect the past. Even a determined maid with kind eyes and dangerous questions. Are you sensing the danger building? Drop a comment and tell me who you think sent Vivian that text. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the secrets in that box are about to explode everything wide open. 2 weeks passed like a held breath. Tiana established routines. Morning stretches with Clarice. Gentle movements that made the little girl giggle, even though her legs wouldn't cooperate. Afternoon reading sessions where they devoured fairy tales and adventure stories. Evening walks through the mansion gardens, Tiana pushing the wheelchair while pointing out constellations and making up stories about the stars. Adrian began emerging from his grief like a man climbing out of a well. Slowly, painfully, but climbing nonetheless. He started joining their afternoon sessions, reading to Clarice in his deep voice that shook with emotion when the stories got too close to home. But Tiana couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Small things at first. The sense that objects in her room had been moved. A door she'd locked standing open. The prickle on the back of her neck when she walked the hallways alone at night. She told herself she was being paranoid. This was a mansion, not a haunted house. There were other staff, the groundskeeper, the part-time cook, the cleaning service that came twice a week. But the feeling persisted. Then came the night that changed everything. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday when Tiana woke to the sound of breaking glass. She bolted upright, her heart slamming against her ribs. The sound had come from downstairs, the study, if she had to guess. Her first thought, Clarice. Tiana grabbed her robe and ran barefoot down the hallway to Clarice's room. The door was open, exactly as Clarice liked it, afraid of the dark since her mother left. The little girl slept peacefully, her chest rising and falling in gentle rhythm. Relief flooded through Tiana, followed immediately by fear. If Clarice was safe, what had broken? She should wake Adrian. She should call the police. She should do anything except what she was about to do. But Tiana Draper had spent 3 years on the streets learning that sometimes you had to walk toward danger to protect what mattered. And what mattered now was this child sleeping upstairs. She crept down the grand staircase, every creak of the old wood sounding like a gunshot in the silence. The study door stood wide open, moonlight spilling across the threshold. Inside, a figure stood with their back to her, illuminated by a flashlight beam. They were rifling through Adrian's desk, papers scattered everywhere. Tiana's hand found the light switch. The overhead chandelier blazed to life. The intruder spun around, and Tiana's breath caught. It was Meredith Blake, Adrian's executive assistant. A woman in her late 40s with sharp features, sharper suits, and eyes like chips of ice. She'd been with Adrian for 15 years, managing his empire, protecting his secrets, and apparently stealing them. Miss Draper. Meredith's voice was calm, controlled, as if she'd been caught doing something as mundane as checking her email. You should be asleep, and you should be explaining why you're breaking into your boss's study at 2 a.m. Tiana's voice came out steadier than she felt. She positioned herself in the doorway, blocking the exit. Meredith smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I'm looking for something that belongs to Mrs. Corleone. Something she asked me to retrieve. Vivian. Tiana's mind raced. She's been gone for weeks. Why would she send you now? That's not your concern. Meredith took a step forward. You're just the help, Miss Draper. And the help would be wise to stay out of family business. The condescension in her voice made something hot and sharp rise in Tiana's chest. She'd heard that tone before. From landlords, from caseworkers, from everyone who thought her circumstances defined her worth. The help, Tiana said quietly, is the one who tucks that little girl in every night. The help is the one who holds her when she cries for a mother who abandoned her. So forgive me if I think I've earned the right to ask questions when someone breaks into this house in the middle of the night. Meredith's smile disappeared. Move aside. No, I could have you fired before sunrise. Then do it. But first, you're going to tell me what you're looking for. They stared at each other, 2 women locked in a battle of wills. Then Meredith did something unexpected. She laughed. You really don't know, do you? Meredith shook her head. You actually believe you're here to help. That's almost adorable. What are you talking about? Clarice's accident wasn't an accident, Miss Draper. Meredith's voice dropped to a whisper. And the reason she hasn't been treated, the reason Adrian keeps all those medical journals locked away, is because treating her would require an investigation. and an investigation would reveal what really happened. Tiana's blood turned to ice. What really happened? Meredith's eyes gleamed with something malicious. Why don't you ask Adrian about the day his wife pushed their daughter down the stairs? The words hung in the air like poison. You're lying. But even as Tiana said it, pieces began clicking into place. Vivian's sudden departure. Adrian's guilt-soaked grief. The hidden box. The medical journals covered in dust. Am I? Meredith moved closer. Vivian didn't abandon her daughter because of the paralysis, Miss Draper. She abandoned her because Clarice started remembering. Started having nightmares. Started saying Mama's name in a way that sounded like an accusation. Tiana's hands were shaking. If that's true, why hasn't Adrian gone to the police? Why protect her? Because Vivian has evidence that would destroy him. Financial crimes. Affairs. Things that would cost him his daughter permanently. Meredith's smile returned. They made a deal. She stays quiet about his secrets, he stays quiet about hers. And poor little Clarice? She's the collateral damage. I don't believe you. Then believe this. Meredith reached into her jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. She tossed it onto the desk. Those are medical records from the night of the accident. Read them. You'll see the doctors noted injuries inconsistent with a simple fall. Bruising patterns that suggested she was grabbed. Pushed. Tiana stared at the envelope like it was a snake. The box you've been so curious about? Meredith continued. It contains a letter from Adrian's mother, Clarice's grandmother. Written days before she died. She knew something was wrong in this house. She tried to intervene. And conveniently, she had a fatal heart attack before she could finish what she started. Stop. Tiana's voice cracked. Just stop. I'm offering you a choice, Miss Draper. Take that envelope. Read it. Then pack your bags and leave this house before you become another casualty. Or, Meredith moved toward the door, brushing past Tiana. Stay. Play hero. And discover that some sins are too big to fix with prayers and good intentions. She paused at the threshold. Oh, and Miss Draper? If you're thinking of running to Adrian with any of this, know that I've already sent copies of those medical records to several journalists. If anything happens to me, if I'm fired, if I'm arrested, if I so much as stub my toe, those records go public. Adrian loses everything. And Clarice? She gets taken by social services while the investigation plays out. Is that what you want? Tiana couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Meredith disappeared into the darkness, leaving Tiana alone with the envelope and a truth that felt like drowning. For a long moment, she just stood there, staring at the manila folder. Then, with trembling hands, she picked it up. Inside were medical records dated 8 months ago. Emergency room intake for Clarice Corleone, age 7. Multiple pages of doctor's notes, x-rays, assessments. And highlighted in yellow, a single line that made Tiana's heart stop. Pattern of injuries suggests non-accidental trauma. Recommend immediate investigation for child abuse. The report was signed by Dr. Catherine Miller, attending physician. Below that, a second note in different handwriting. Per family attorney request, investigation declined. Case closed at guardian request. Tiana's legs gave out. She sank into Adrian's leather desk chair, the papers falling from her hands. Clarice hadn't fallen. She'd been pushed. And everyone, Adrian, the doctors, Vivian, probably Meredith too, had conspired to bury it. Tiana's vision blurred with tears. How could Adrian do this? How could he protect the woman who'd hurt his daughter? How could he look Clarice in the eye every day knowing the truth? But then another thought struck her, sharp and clear. The letter. The one Meredith mentioned. From Adrian's mother. If the grandmother knew something was wrong, if she tried to intervene, maybe she'd left more than just suspicions. Maybe she'd left evidence. Instructions. A way to help Clarice without destroying everything. Tiana stood on shaking legs and moved to the bookshelf. The medical journals. The hidden box. Her hands found the small wooden container wedged behind the dusty books. Still locked. She needed a key. Or a way to break it open without Adrian noticing. But as she pulled the box free, something else tumbled out from behind the books. A loose page, folded small and yellowed with age. Tiana unfolded it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was elderly, shaky but determined. To whoever finds this, my son is a coward, but he's not a monster. He's protecting his daughter the only way he knows how, by making deals with the devil. But I've found another way. Dr. Helena Rodriguez, St. Catherine's Hospital, Neurological Wing. She specializes in spinal trauma, and she owes me a debt she can never repay. I've enclosed her private number. Show her the x-rays from the night of the incident, and she'll know what to do. The therapy will be painful. It will take months, maybe years. But it will work. I've seen the studies. I've consulted with the best. Clarice can walk again. But it must be done in secret. Vivian cannot know. If she discovers there's hope, she'll destroy it. She needs Clarice broken to maintain her leverage. Tell Adrian I love him. Tell him his mother died trying to fix what he was too afraid to fix himself. And tell my granddaughter that she was born to dance. Margaret Corleone. At the bottom of the letter was a phone number. Tiana pressed the paper to her chest, her entire body shaking with something that felt like lightning in her veins. She had the answer, the way forward, the miracle. But she also had the truth, and the truth was a loaded gun. If she pursued this treatment, she'd have to confront Adrian, demand answers, risk everything. If Meredith made good on her threat, Clarice would be taken away. But if Tiana did nothing, Clarice would never walk, would never dance, would never be free. Outside the study window, the first light of dawn was breaking. Tiana folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her robe pocket. Then she picked up the envelope with the medical records, carried it to the fireplace, and set it on fire. Let Meredith wonder. Let Vivian scheme. Let Adrian hide in his guilt. Tiana Draper was done asking permission to save a child. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number from the letter. It rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered, groggy with sleep. This is Dr. Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez, my name is Tiana Draper. I'm calling about Clarice Corleone, and I need your help to give her back her legs. There was a pause. Then, Margaret sent you. In a way, tell me everything. As Tiana began to speak, she glanced at the doorway and froze. Adrian stood there in his pajamas, his face pale, his eyes locked on the burning envelope in the fireplace. How long have you been standing there? Tiana whispered. Long enough, he said quietly. Long enough to know that I've been a coward. And long enough to know that you're the answer to a prayer I was too ashamed to speak out loud. Their eyes met across the study. Help her, Adrian said, his voice breaking. Please, whatever it takes. Just help my daughter walk again. 3 months. That's how long Dr. Helena Rodriguez said it would take to see real progress. 3 months of secret therapy sessions, of stretching muscles that had forgotten how to work, of pain that made Clarice cry into her pillow at night. 3 months of lying to everyone. Tiana transformed the mansion's unused sunroom into a makeshift therapy center. She told the other staff it was a special playroom for Clarice. Only Adrian knew the truth, and he paid Dr. Rodriguez's astronomical fees in cash, keeping the transactions off any books Vivian or Meredith might access. Every morning at 6, before the rest of the household stirred, Tiana and Clarice began their work. I can't, Clarice whimpered on week 2, tears streaming down her face as Tiana guided her through another round of muscle stimulation. It hurts too much. I know, baby. I know. Tiana's own eyes were wet. But you know what hurts more? Never dancing again. Never running. Never feeling grass under your feet. What if it doesn't work? Tiana cupped the little girl's face. Then we'll know we fought with everything we had. But Clarice, I've seen you move that left toe 3 times this week. 3 times. That's not nothing. That's everything. Clarice sniffled. Really? You really saw it. I really saw it. And when you walk again, not if, when, I'm going to be right there cheering so loud they'll hear me in Paris. The mention of Paris made Clarice's face darken. That's where Mama is. Your mama made a choice. A terrible, selfish choice. Tiana pulled Clarice into her arms. But you're making a different choice. You're choosing to fight. And that makes you braver than she'll ever be. What Tiana didn't tell Clarice was that the therapy was working faster than Dr. Rodriguez had predicted. The specialist had been shocked by the girl's resilience, her determination. Last week, Clarice had flexed her right ankle. Yesterday, she'd bent her knee. The paralysis hadn't been as severe as everyone thought. The trauma, the lack of treatment, the months of immobility, those had made it worse. But with aggressive intervention, with love and hope and relentless work, Clarice's body was remembering. She was coming back. But so was Vivian. Adrian's phone buzzed during breakfast one morning. He glanced at the screen, and his face went gray. What is it? Tiana asked, spreading jam on Clarice's toast. She's coming back. Adrian's voice was hollow. Vivian. She'll be here tomorrow. Clarice dropped her fork. No. It's okay, sweetheart. No. Clarice's scream echoed through the dining room. I don't want to see her. Don't let her come, Daddy. Please. Adrian rushed to his daughter's side, but Clarice was hyperventilating, her small body shaking with panic. Tiana had seen this before. PTSD from the fall, from the push, from months of trauma no child should endure. Clarice, look at me. Tiana knelt beside the wheelchair, taking the girl's hands. Breathe with me. In and out. In and out. Slowly, Clarice's breathing steadied, but her eyes remained wild with fear. She can't know about the therapy, Clarice whispered. Miss Tiana, she can't know I'm getting better. She'll what, baby? Clarice looked at her father, then back at Tiana. She'll hurt me again. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Adrian made a sound like a wounded animal and collapsed into the nearest chair, his head in his hands. Tiana's jaw tightened. She won't touch you. I promise you that. But you're right. We can't let her know about the therapy. Which means for the next few days, you have to pretend nothing's changed. I can do that, Clarice said, her voice small but determined. I'm good at pretending. The fact that a 7-year-old had to be good at pretending made Tiana want to break something. Vivian arrived the next afternoon in a cloud of Chanel perfume and fake remorse. She looked exactly as Tiana had imagined, blonde, beautiful, cold as marble. Her designer dress probably cost more than Tiana made in 6 months. Her smile was perfect. Her eyes were empty. Adrian, darling. She air-kissed his cheeks. Thank you for agreeing to this visit. I've missed Clarice terribly. Liar, Tiana thought, standing in the corner of the foyer, watching. Vivian's gaze swept over her, dismissive. And you must be the help. Tiana Draper, ma'am. I take care of Clarice. How charitable of you. Vivian's tone made it clear what she thought of Tiana's charity. Her eyes lingered on Tiana's dark skin, her simple dress, her natural hair. Everything about Vivian's expression said, you don't belong here. Tiana had seen that look 1,000 times. It didn't sting anymore. It just made her stronger. Where's my daughter? Vivian asked. In the library, Adrian said quietly. She's nervous about seeing you. Oh, I'm sure the maid has been filling her head with all sorts of ideas about me. Vivian shot Tiana a venomous glance. Actually, Tiana said calmly, I don't have to say a word. Clarice remembers everything about you just fine. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Vivian's perfect mask slipped for just a moment, and underneath, Tiana saw something reptilian. Dangerous. I'll see my daughter now. As Vivian walked toward the library, her heels clicking against marble, Tiana caught Adrian's arm. Don't leave them alone, she whispered. Not for a second. Adrian nodded, following his ex-wife. Tiana waited exactly 30 seconds before creeping closer to the library door, pressing her ear against the wood. Inside, she could hear Vivian's saccharine voice. Oh, my poor baby. Still in that dreadful wheelchair. Have you made any progress at all? No, Mama. Clarice's voice was flat, emotionless. The doctors say I'll never walk again. Such a tragedy. But Vivian didn't sound tragic. She sounded satisfied. Tiana's hands clenched into fists. Then she heard something that made her blood freeze. You know, Vivian said quietly, I've been thinking. Perhaps you'd be better off in a special facility. Somewhere with medical staff, other children like you. Adrian, don't you think? No. Adrian's voice was steel. Clarice stays here. But surely you can see how hard this is on everyone. And that maid. Really, Adrian, is she even qualified? I've done some research, and there are concerns about her background. Did you know she was homeless? That she has a criminal record. Tiana's heart stopped. She didn't have a criminal record. Vivian was lying. But if she was lying about that, what else was she planning? Miss Tiana takes excellent care of me, Clarice said, her voice stronger now. She's the best person I know. How sweet, Vivian cooed. But children don't always know what's best for them. Do they, Adrian? The threat was clear. Side with the maid, lose your daughter. Tiana backed away from the door, her mind racing. She needed to call Dr. Rodriguez. Needed to accelerate the therapy timeline. Needed to get Clarice walking before Vivian could execute whatever plan she was hatching. She pulled out her phone and texted the doctor. Emergency. Can you come tonight? The response was immediate. I'll be there at midnight. That night, while Vivian slept in the guest wing and Adrian paced his study, Tiana and Dr. Rodriguez worked with Clarice in the sunroom. I need you to push harder than you ever have, Dr. Rodriguez said, her kind face serious. Can you do that? Clarice, exhausted and scared, nodded. For 2 hours they worked. Stretching, stimulating, strengthening. And then, at 2 a.m., as Tiana held Clarice's hands and Dr. Rodriguez supported her legs, the impossible happened. Clarice stood. Not for long. Maybe 5 seconds before her legs buckled and Tiana caught her. But she stood. Oh my God, Tiana whispered, tears streaming down her face. Baby, you did it. You stood up. Clarice looked up at her, eyes wide with wonder and exhaustion. I felt my legs, Miss Tiana. I really felt them. Dr. Rodriguez was grinning. 2 more weeks. Maybe 3. She'll be walking. But as Tiana helped Clarice back into her wheelchair, she saw something that made her heart stop. A shadow in the hallway, moving away from the sunroom door. Someone had been watching. And in the morning, Vivian would know everything. The shadow belonged to Meredith. Tiana discovered this the next morning when she found the executive assistant waiting in the kitchen, sipping coffee with a smile that could cut glass. That was quite a show last night, Meredith said, not looking up from her phone. The child standing. Very touching. Very illegal. Tiana's blood turned cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. I have video. Meredith turned her phone around, showing grainy footage of Clarice standing in the sunroom, Tiana and Dr. Rodriguez on either side. Unlicensed medical treatment of a minor. Conducted without the non-custodial parent's knowledge or consent. That's a felony, Miss Draper. Tiana's hands trembled. Vivian abandoned her. She has no rights. Actually, she does. Joint custody was never legally dissolved. Meredith's smile widened. Adrian was too guilty to push for it, which means every therapy session you've conducted is a violation. I could have you arrested before lunch. What do you want? Smart girl. Meredith set down her coffee. I want you gone. Today. Pack your things and disappear. Do that, and I'll delete this video. Stay, and I'll send it to Vivian, the police, and every news outlet that loves a good scandal. You're protecting her. Tiana's voice shook with rage. You're helping the woman who pushed a child down the stairs. I'm protecting my paycheck. Vivian pays me triple what Adrian does to keep her informed. Meredith stood, smoothing her suit. Nothing personal, Miss Draper. But you're out of your depth. Go back to whatever shelter you crawled from and let the adults handle this. She walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and if you're thinking of running to Adrian, I've already sent him a lovely email about some financial irregularities. Offshore accounts. Tax fraud. Nothing that will stick, but enough to keep him busy with lawyers for weeks. He won't have time to save you. The kitchen door swung shut, leaving Tiana alone with her hammering heart. She had 2 choices. Run and abandon Clarice, or stay and risk everything. It took her exactly 3 seconds to decide. She pulled out her phone and called the one person who might have answers. Pastor Raymond, I need a lawyer. The best you know. And I need them now. By noon, Tiana had met with Marcus Riley, a civil rights attorney who specialized in child welfare cases. He listened to everything, the abuse, the therapy, Meredith's threats, and then delivered news that made Tiana's heart soar. Vivian's joint custody is meaningless. She abandoned the child for months, provided no support, and there's documented evidence of abuse. Any judge would terminate her rights immediately. Marcus leaned forward. But here's the beautiful part. Adrian has been documenting everything. Every missed call from Vivian. Every refused visit. Every dollar he spent on Clarice's care while Vivian partied in Europe. He has. Tiana's voice cracked with hope. Oh, he's been busy. Called me 2 weeks ago, actually. Asked me to prepare an emergency custody petition. We're filing it tomorrow. Marcus grinned. Miss Draper, you're not the only one fighting for that little girl. Adrian's been building a case to destroy Vivian legally. He was just waiting for the right moment. Does Vivian know? Not yet, but she will soon. Marcus stood. As for Meredith's threats, the therapy is completely legal. Adrian is the custodial parent, and he authorized it. Meredith is bluffing. Relief crashed over Tiana like a wave. So I can stay. You can stay. But Miss Draper. Marcus's face grew serious. When Vivian finds out about the custody petition, she's going to go nuclear. You need to be ready. Tiana returned to the mansion to find chaos. Vivian's shrieks echoed through the marble halls. Glass shattered. Adrian's voice, usually so controlled, roared with a fury Tiana had never heard. She ran toward the sound, bursting into the study to find Vivian holding a vase over her head, aimed at Adrian's skull. Papers were scattered everywhere. Furniture overturned. "You're taking my daughter?" Vivian screamed. "After everything I've done for this family? Everything you've done?" Adrian's face was purple with rage. "You pushed her down the stairs. You paralyzed our child and then abandoned her. She was annoying me. Always crying, always needing something." Vivian's mask had completely shattered, revealing the monster underneath. "I gave up my body to birth her. And for what? A broken little thing who can't even walk." Tiana stepped into the room. "But she can." Both of them spun to look at her. "What did you say?" Vivian's voice was deadly quiet. "I said she can walk." Tiana's voice was steady, strong. "Or she will be able to very soon. Thanks to the therapy her grandmother arranged before you helped kill her." Vivian's face went white. "Margaret didn't. She had a heart attack." "Did she?" Adrian's voice was ice. "Because I found her medical records this morning. Perfectly healthy heart. But she did have unusual levels of medication in her system. Medication she wasn't prescribed." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. "You didn't," Adrian whispered, staring at his wife with dawning horror. "Vivian, tell me you didn't kill my mother." Vivian dropped the vase. It shattered at her feet. She was going to ruin everything. "She knew about my affair with Jonathan, about the money I was stealing from your accounts, about—" She stopped, realizing she'd said too much. "About what?" Tiana pressed. "What else did Margaret know?" Vivian's laugh was unhinged. "That Clarice isn't even his daughter. Jonathan Prescott is her father. That's why I pushed her. She was starting to look like him, and I couldn't risk Adrian figuring it out." The silence that followed was deafening. Adrian sank into his chair, his face gray. "What? Oh, don't look so shocked. You were always working, always too busy for me." Jonathan paid attention. "And when I got pregnant, I saw an opportunity." Vivian's smile was manic. "Your mother figured it out. Ran DNA tests behind my back. She was going to tell you, going to expose me, going to take away everything I'd built. So you murdered her." Tiana's voice shook. "I removed an obstacle." Vivian shrugged. "And I would have gotten away with it if that brat hadn't started remembering. Started having nightmares about Mama's angry face and falling forever. So I left before she could say too much." "You're insane," Adrian whispered. "No, I'm practical." Vivian straightened her dress. "And now I'm going to walk out of here, and you're going to let me. Because if you don't, I'll tell the world that you harbored a murderer, that you knew about your mother's death and said nothing, that you're complicit. Except we recorded all of this." Everyone turned to see Meredith standing in the doorway, holding up her phone. Her face was pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought it was just about money. About an affair. I didn't know you killed Margaret." Meredith's voice broke. "She was kind to me. When my mother died, Margaret paid for the funeral. She was a good woman." "You little—" Vivian lunged for Meredith, but Tiana was faster. She stepped between them, and when Vivian's hand swung toward her face, Tiana caught it midair. "Touch her, touch any of us, and I'll break every bone in your hand before the police arrive," Tiana said quietly. "Try me." Vivian stared at her, and for the first time, Tiana saw fear in those cold eyes. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "I already called them," Meredith said, lowering her phone. "Sent them the recording. Vivian, you're done." What happened next moved like a nightmare and fast forward. Police burst through the doors. Vivian screamed and fought as they read her rights. Adrian sat motionless, processing the revelation that the daughter he'd loved for 7 years wasn't biologically his. Meredith pulled Tiana aside as officers swarmed the study. "I'm sorry," the woman whispered. "I thought I was just helping with a messy divorce. I didn't know, God, I didn't know." "You know now." Tiana's voice was firm but not unkind. "Make it right." Meredith nodded, wiping her eyes. "The video from last night? I already deleted it. And I'm prepared to testify about everything Vivian made me do." As they led Vivian away in handcuffs, still screaming threats and obscenities, Tiana's only thought was of Clarice. She ran upstairs to find the little girl in her room, headphones on, reading a book. She'd heard nothing. Thank God. "Miss Tiana?" Clarice looked up, pulling off her headphones. "Is Mama gone?" "Yes, baby. She's gone. And she's never coming back." "Good." Clarice's voice was small but certain. "Does Daddy know I'm not really his?" Tiana froze. "You heard. I hear everything. These walls are thin." Clarice's eyes filled with tears. Is he going to send me away now? The door opened before Tiana could answer. Adrian stood there, his face ravaged by grief and shock. He looked at Clarice, and for a terrible moment, Tiana thought he might turn and leave. Instead, he crossed the room in 3 strides, knelt beside her wheelchair, and pulled her into his arms. You are my daughter, he said fiercely. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. And I have loved you every single day of your life. Do you understand me? Clarice sobbed into his shoulder. Even though I'm not really yours, you are really mine. In every way that matters. He pulled back, cupping her face. And I'm going to watch you walk again. I'm going to watch you dance. I'm going to watch you grow up and be extraordinary. Because that's what fathers do. Over Clarice's head, Adrian's eyes met Tiana's. And in that look, Tiana saw something that made her breath catch. Gratitude, respect, and something else. Something deeper. Something that felt dangerously like love. The media descended like vultures. Within 24 hours of Vivian's arrest, the mansion was surrounded by news vans, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing through the gates. Billionaire's wife arrested for murder. Paralyzed child not his. Affair, abuse, and assassination. Adrian's company stock plummeted. Board members called emergency meetings. Investors panicked. The empire he'd built over 20 years teetered on the edge of collapse. But worse than the financial ruin was the call from Child Protective Services. Mr. Corleone, the social worker said, her voice professionally sympathetic but unyielding. Given the circumstances, the abuse, the murder investigation, the questions about paternity, we need to temporarily remove Clarice from the home while we conduct a full investigation. No. Adrian's voice was steel. Absolutely not. Sir, it's protocol. A child was harmed under your roof, and you failed to report it. We have concerns about. I am her father, the only father she's ever known. You take her from this house, and you'll destroy what little stability she has left. We have a court order, Mr. Corleone. We'll be there tomorrow at 9 a.m. The line went dead. Adrian stood in his study, staring at the phone in his hand, feeling his entire world crumbling. He'd lost his wife, his mother, his reputation, his company. And now they were taking his daughter. A soft knock interrupted his spiral. Tiana stood in the doorway, her eyes red from crying. I heard. Adrian, I'm so sorry. He looked at her. This woman who'd walked into his broken home and somehow held all the pieces together. This woman who'd loved his daughter when everyone else had given up. I can't lose her, Tiana. I can't. His voice cracked. She's all I have left. Tiana crossed the room and did something she'd never done before. She took his hand. Then we fight. We get Marcus back here. We show them the therapy progress, the love in this home, the fact that you've been fighting for her all along. It won't matter. The optics are terrible. A billionaire who covered up abuse, who stayed married to a murderer. Who? He stopped, overwhelmed. Who loved his daughter more than his pride. Tiana finished quietly. Who hired the best help he could find. Who's been paying for secret therapy because he was trying to protect her from more trauma. Adrian, you're not the villain here. Then why does it feel like I'm losing everything? Their faces were inches apart now. Close enough that Adrian could smell her shampoo. Something simple and clean. Nothing like Vivian's expensive perfumes. Close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Close enough to forget, for just a moment, that the world was ending. You're not losing everything, Tiana whispered. You still have her. And you still have. You. Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. Do I still have you, Tiana? Because everyone else has abandoned me. My wife. My business partners. Half my staff quit this morning. I'm not going anywhere. Why? Why would you stay? This isn't your fight. You could leave right now, find a nice quiet family, avoid this disaster. Tiana's eyes searched his face. Because 3 months ago, I walked into this house and found a broken man and a broken child. And I don't leave broken things to stay broken. That's not who I am. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to name. Adrian's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But Clarice does. So let's make sure she keeps us both. The next morning brought another nightmare. Jonathan Prescott, the real biological father, held a press conference on the mansion's front lawn, cameras rolling as he announced his intention to sue for full custody. That little girl is my daughter, he declared, his handsome face arranged in fake concern. And I will not let Adrian Corleone continue raising her as his own when he has no legal right. Blood matters. Family matters. Tiana watched from the window, rage burning in her chest. Jonathan Prescott was a shark in an expensive suit, a real estate mogul with 3 ex-wives and a reputation for cruelty. He didn't want Clarice. He wanted Adrian's fortune, Adrian's legacy, the massive trust fund Adrian had set up for Clarice. He's playing the long game. Marcus explained when he arrived an hour later. He wins custody, gets access to Clarice's trust, which is worth over $50 million, and bleeds Adrian dry in the process. Can he actually win? Adrian asked, his face haggard. Marcus hesitated. With Vivian testifying on his behalf? With the media painting you as complicit? And with CPS recommending removal? Adrian, I won't lie to you. It's bad. Clarice appeared in the doorway, still in her wheelchair, her face pale. I heard. Everyone turned. That man on TV. He says he's my father. Her voice was small, scared. Is he taking me away from Daddy? Tiana moved to her side instantly. No, baby. We won't let that happen. But what if they make me go? What if I have to live with him? Clarice's eyes filled with tears. Miss Tiana, I don't even know him. And what if? What if I go away before I can walk again? What if the therapy stops and I never? She broke down sobbing. Adrian crossed the room and knelt beside her wheelchair, gathering her in his arms. Listen to me, Clarice. I have been your father since the day you were born. I was there for your first word, your first step, your first day of school. I was there when you fell, and I will be there when you walk again. No court, no biological father, no one is taking you from me. Do you understand? But what if? No what ifs. I will burn down everything I own, spend every dollar I have, fight until my last breath. You are my daughter. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, there might be another option. Everyone looked at him. Adrian could marry someone who could provide a stable 2-parent home. Someone Clarice already trusts. Someone who's been the primary caregiver for months. His eyes moved meaningfully between Adrian and Tiana. The room went silent. You're suggesting a marriage of convenience, Adrian said slowly. I'm suggesting that courts favor married households. And that Tiana has been more of a mother to Clarice in 3 months than Vivian was in 7 years. Tiana's heart hammered. That's insane. We barely know each other. We can't just. Can't we? Adrian turned to her, his blue eyes intense. Tiana, you said you weren't going anywhere. This is how you stay. This is how we keep her. Adrian, marriage isn't a legal strategy. No, it's a promise. He took her hands. A promise that will do whatever it takes to protect that little girl. That will build a family from the ashes of what we've lost. It doesn't have to be romantic. It doesn't have to be forever. Just long enough to prove to the courts that Clarice has a stable home. Tiana looked at Clarice, who was watching with wide, hopeful eyes. Would you want that, baby? Tiana asked softly. Would you want me to stay? To be your mama? Clarice's face crumpled. More than anything. Tiana looked back at Adrian. At this broken, desperate man who loved his daughter so fiercely he'd marry a stranger to save her. And she thought about her own journey. From homeless to housemaid to wife, mother. It was crazy. Impossible. Completely insane. Okay, she whispered. Let's do it. But even as they made plans, even as Marcus began drafting paperwork, none of them knew that Vivian had made a call from jail. A call to someone who owed her a favor. Someone who specialized in making problems disappear. And Tiana Draper, the woman who'd ruined everything, was about to become the biggest problem of all. That night, as Tiana walked to her car to retrieve some belongings, she didn't notice the black van idling at the end of the driveway. Didn't see the 2 men in masks stepping out. Didn't hear them coming until a hand clamped over her mouth, and everything went dark. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was a voice saying, Mrs. Corleone sends her regards. Tiana woke to darkness and the smell of mildew. Her head throbbed. Her wrists were zip-tied behind her back. She was in some kind of warehouse, judging by the echo of distant water dripping and the cold concrete beneath her. She's awake, a voice said from the shadows. 2 figures emerged, the men from the van. One was tall and broad, the other wiry with nervous energy. Nothing personal, lady, the tall one said. Just business. Mrs. Corleone paid us to keep you here for 72 hours. By then, the custody hearing will be over, and you won't be around to play happy family. You're making a mistake. Tiana's voice was hoarse but steady. That woman is in jail for murder. Whatever she promised you, she can't deliver. She already delivered. Cash up front. The wiry one grinned. In 3 days, we drop you at a bus station with a one-way ticket to anywhere. You disappear, we disappear, everybody wins. Except Clarice, Tiana thought. Except that little girl who's about to lose everything. Please. She tried a different approach. There's a child involved. A 7-year-old girl who's been through hell. She needs me. Not our problem. They left her in the darkness, and Tiana felt despair creeping in like cold water. She'd promised Clarice she wouldn't leave. Promised Adrian she'd stay and fight. And now she was useless, bound and helpless while everything fell apart. But then she remembered something Pastor Raymond had told her years ago. God doesn't bring you through the wilderness just to let you die in the desert. When things look darkest, that's when the breakthrough comes. Tiana closed her eyes and prayed. Not for rescue. Not for miracles. She prayed for strength. And then she got to work. Back at the mansion, Adrian was losing his mind. She's been gone for 6 hours. He paced his study like a caged animal while police officers asked useless questions. Tiana wouldn't just disappear. Something happened to her. Sir, her car is still here. Her phone was found in the driveway, and there are security camera blind spots. We're treating this as a possible abduction, the detective said. But we need you to think. Does Miss Draper have any enemies? Anyone who'd want to hurt her? Vivian, Adrian said immediately. My ex-wife. She's in jail, but she has connections. Resources. We'll look into it. But Mr. Corleone, you should know. The custody hearing is still scheduled for tomorrow morning. If Miss Draper doesn't appear, and you can't provide proof of the stable home you promised, I'll lose Clarice. I know. Adrian's voice cracked. Just find her. Please. After the police left, Marcus arrived with grim news. Jonathan Prescott's lawyers filed an emergency motion. They're arguing that Tiana's disappearance proves the home is unstable and dangerous. The judge is considering moving Clarice into foster care tonight. No. Adrian stood abruptly. Absolutely not. I'll call in every favor, hire private investigators, offer a reward. Daddy. Both men turned to find Clarice in the doorway. She wasn't in her wheelchair. She was standing, gripping the doorframe for support, her legs shaking but holding her weight. Clarice. Adrian rushed to her side. Baby, you shouldn't be. I heard everything. Tears streamed down her face. They took Miss Tiana because of me. Because she was trying to help me. No, sweetheart, this isn't your fault. Then whose fault is it? Clarice's voice rose, stronger than Adrian had heard in months. Everyone keeps getting hurt because of me. Grandma died because of me. Miss Tiana is gone because of me. And now they're going to take me away, and you'll be all alone, and it's all my fault. Her legs gave out, but Adrian caught her, sinking to the floor with her in his arms. Listen to me, he said fiercely. None of this is your fault. You are a child. A brave, beautiful child who survived something terrible. And yes, people are getting hurt. But not because of you. Because of evil people making evil choices. But what if we never find Miss Tiana? What if she's... Clarice couldn't finish the sentence. Then we'll honor her by living. By fighting. By proving that everything she sacrificed wasn't in vain. Adrian pulled back to look at his daughter. And Clarice? You just stood up. You walked to this room on your own legs. Do you understand what that means? That the therapy worked, Clarice whispered. That you worked. That you're stronger than anyone who ever tried to break you. Adrian's voice shook with pride and grief. Tomorrow, when they come to take you, you're going to stand up and show them that you're not a victim. You're a fighter. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, if Clarice can walk, that changes everything. It proves the therapy was successful, that this home provided the care she needed. Combined with Meredith's testimony about Vivian's crimes, we might actually win this. But we need Tiana, Adrian said. The judge wants to see a stable 2-parent home. Then we find her. The voice came from the doorway. Meredith stood there, her laptop open, her face determined. I've been going through Vivian's phone records from jail. She made 3 calls yesterday. One was to her lawyer. One was to Jonathan Prescott, confirming they're working together. And one was to a burner phone registered to a shell company owned by a man named Vincent Torres. Who is he? Adrian asked. Enforcer for hire. Specializes in making problems disappear quietly. Meredith's fingers flew across her keyboard. But he's sloppy. I tracked his payment apps. 2 large deposits yesterday, both geotagged to the same location when he accepted them. She turned the laptop around, showing a map with a red pin. Abandoned textile warehouse. 20 miles from here. If Tiana's anywhere, she's there. Adrian was already moving, grabbing his keys. Adrian, wait, we should call the police. Marcus started. No time. The hearing is in 12 hours. I'm not losing both of them. Adrian looked at Clarice. Baby, I need you to be brave for me. Stay here with Marcus and Meredith. If I'm not back in 2 hours, they'll handle everything. Okay, bring her home, Daddy. Clarice's voice was small but fierce. Bring our family home. Adrian kissed her forehead and ran. Tiana had worked her wrists raw against the zip tie for 3 hours before she heard it. A car pulling up outside, doors slamming, urgent voices. Please let it be help. Please let it be. Tiana. Adrian's voice. He'd found her. The warehouse door burst open, and Adrian charged in with a crowbar in hand, looking like he'd fight an army to reach her. I'm here, she shouted. Adrian, I'm here. He found her in seconds, dropping to his knees and breaking the zip ties with the crowbar. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm okay. I'm okay. She collapsed against him, and his arms wrapped around her like he'd never let go. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered into her hair. I thought, God, Tiana, I can't do this without you. She pulled back to look at him. This man who'd driven into danger without hesitation, whose eyes held something far deeper than gratitude. You won't have to, she said. I made a promise to Clarice. To you. I'm not going anywhere. Adrian's hand cupped her face, and for a moment the warehouse, the danger, the chaos, all of it faded. When this is over, he said quietly, when we've saved her and beaten them all, I want to have a conversation about why I just drove 20 miles without calling the police because the thought of you in danger made me lose my mind. Is this your way of saying the marriage of convenience might be more than convenient? This is my way of saying that somewhere between hiring you and right now, you became the most important person in my life. And I don't know what to do with that. We could start by winning tomorrow, and then figure out the rest. Deal. They drove back together, racing against time, hands intertwined across the center console. Behind them, police arrived at the warehouse to arrest Vincent Torres and his partner. And ahead of them, in a mansion that had known so much grief, a little girl stood by the window on her own 2 legs, watching for headlights and believing in miracles. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the walls. Jonathan Prescott sat with his legal team, looking confident and polished. Vivian, brought from jail in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, sat in the back row with guards on either side, her blonde hair stringy, her perfect mask finally shattered. Adrian and Tiana entered together, fingers interlaced. Behind them, Marcus pushed Clarice's wheelchair. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Margaret Chun, raised an eyebrow at the crowd. This is a custody hearing, not a media circus. Cameras off. Pressed to the back. As everyone settled, Jonathan's lawyer stood first. He was exactly the type you'd expect. Expensive suit, practiced smile, voice like honey over knives. Your Honor, this case is simple. My client, Jonathan Prescott, is the biological father of Clarice Prescott. Corleone, Adrian interrupted. Her name is Clarice Corleone, and has been denied any relationship with his daughter by Adrian Corleone, who knowingly raised another man's child while covering up abuse and murder in his household. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Mr. Prescott simply wants what any father would want. To know his child, to provide for her, to give her the stable home she deserves. A home not tainted by scandal and violence. The judge looked at Adrian. Mr. Corleone, you knew this child wasn't biologically yours? Adrian stood. I learned the truth 1 week ago, Your Honor. But I have been her father for 7 years. I was there when she was born. I walked her to her first day of school. I held her hand through every doctor's appointment after her injury. Biology doesn't make you a parent. Love does. Pretty words, Jonathan's lawyer sneered. But the fact remains that Mr. Corleone harbored a woman who abused this child, covered up a murder, and has now created such an unstable environment that Miss Draper was kidnapped from his property just yesterday. Judge Chen's expression darkened. Is this true? Miss Draper was abducted. Marcus stood. It's true, Your Honor. And we have proof it was orchestrated by Mrs. Vivian Corleone and Mr. Jonathan Prescott working together. The courtroom erupted. Order. Judge Chen slammed her gavel. Mr. Riley, you'd better be able to back that up. Marcus nodded to Meredith, who approached the bench with a tablet. Your Honor, these are phone records showing calls between Mrs. Corleone and Mr. Prescott in the weeks before her arrest. Text messages discussing, removing obstacles, and eliminating the help. And financial records showing Mr. Prescott paid Vincent Torres, the man arrested for kidnapping Miss Draper, $50,000 2 days before the abduction. Jonathan shot to his feet. That's fabricated. I never. We also have this. Meredith played an audio file. Vivian's voice filled the courtroom. Jonathan, darling, you need to handle the maid. She's ruining everything. Make her disappear for a few days. By the time she surfaces, Adrian will have lost custody and will have access to Clarice's trust fund. Just like we planned. Jonathan's response. Consider it done. After all, what's 50 grand when we're about to control 50 million? The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Chen's face could have carved stone. Mr. Prescott, you and your attorney will remain seated while I determine whether to hold you in contempt and refer this for criminal investigation. Jonathan's lawyer was sweating now. Your Honor, this is clearly a setup. What's clear, the judge interrupted, is that you came into my courtroom claiming to care about a child while actively conspiring to harm the people caring for her. Sit down. Marcus returned to Adrian's side. Now, Your Honor, we'd like to present our case. Starting with Miss Clarice Corleone herself. The child is paralyzed. Jonathan's lawyer protested weakly. You can't expect. Actually, Tiana said, standing and moving to Clarice's wheelchair, she's not. The courtroom went silent as Tiana extended her hand to Clarice. You ready, baby? Tiana whispered. Clarice nodded, her eyes shining with determination and tears. And then, as cameras clicked despite the judge's orders, as every person in that courtroom held their breath, Clarice Corleone gripped Tiana's hand and stood up. Not quickly, not perfectly. Her legs shook, her balance wavered. But she stood, and then she walked. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. She walked across the courtroom floor to where her father sat, tears streaming down his face. Hi, Daddy, she said, her voice strong and clear. I can walk now. Adrian swept her into his arms, sobbing openly, and the courtroom exploded with emotion. Even Judge Chen had to dab at her eyes with a tissue. When order was finally restored, Clarice remained standing beside her father, holding his hand. Judge Chen leaned forward. Clarice, honey, I have some questions for you. Is that okay? Yes, ma'am. Do you know who that man is? She pointed to Jonathan. Clarice looked at him coldly. He says he's my biological father. But I don't know him. And I don't want to know him. Why not? Because he hurt Miss Tiana. And anybody who hurts the people I love isn't family. They're just strangers who share DNA. Judge Chen smiled slightly. That's very wise. Now, who do you want to live with? My daddy. Adrian Corleone. He's the only father I've ever needed. Clarice turned to Tiana. And Miss Tiana. She taught me how to walk again. How to be brave again. She's been more of a mother to me in 3 months than Vivian ever was. And if I were to grant custody to Mr. Corleone, would you be happy? I'd be home, Clarice said simply. That's all I want. To go home with my real family. The judge looked at Adrian and Tiana. Mr. Corleone, Miss Draper, approached the bench. They stood together, Tiana's hand finding Adrian's. Miss Draper, Judge Chen said quietly, you're not married to Mr. Corleone. You're an employee. Why should I believe this arrangement is permanent? Adrian spoke before Tiana could. Because we're getting married, Your Honor. Not for show. Not for this case. Because Tiana Draper walked into my life when everything was broken, and she put it back together with nothing but love and faith. She's proven she's more committed to my daughter than anyone I've ever known. And I, his voice caught, I've fallen in love with her. Completely. Irrevocably. Tiana's breath caught. They hadn't talked about this. Hadn't planned this moment. Adrian turned to her, right there in the courtroom, and took both her hands. I know this isn't romantic. I know we said it was convenient. But Tiana, nothing about you is convenient. You're extraordinary. You're fierce and kind, and you make me want to be the man Clarice sees when she looks at me. So yes, we're getting married. And if you'll have me, if you'll have us, I promise to spend the rest of my life earning the gift you've given this family. Tiana's tears flowed freely now. You don't have to earn anything, Adrian. You already have my heart. They kissed, soft and sweet, while the courtroom erupted in applause and Clarice cheered louder than anyone. Judge Chen banged her gavel, but she was smiling. Order. Though I admit, that was better than most proposals I've seen. She shuffled her papers. Based on the evidence presented, the proof of conspiracy between Mrs. Corleone and Mr. Prescott, the documented abuse and neglect by Mrs. Corleone, the extraordinary progress Clarice has made in Mr. Corleone's care, and the clear bond between this child and her family, I'm ruling as follows. The courtroom fell silent. Full custody is granted to Adrian Corleone. Vivian Corleone's parental rights are permanently terminated. Jonathan Prescott's petition is denied, and I'm referring his actions to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Furthermore, she looked directly at Jonathan, who had gone pale. Mr. Prescott, you will have no contact with this child now or ever. If you come within 500 feet of her, I will personally ensure you spend the next decade in prison. Am I clear? Yes, Your Honor, Jonathan whispered. Good. This case is closed. The gavel fell one final time. Adrian pulled both Clarice and Tiana into his arms as the courtroom celebrated around them. Meredith wiped her eyes. Marcus pumped his fist in victory. And in the back row, Vivian watched her former family embrace, her face twisted with rage and defeat, knowing she'd lost everything. As guards led her away, Tiana caught her eye one last time and smiled, because love had won, family had won, and no amount of money or manipulation could change that. 6 months later, the mansion gardens had been transformed into something magical. White roses climbed trellises wrapped in fairy lights. A string quartet played soft melodies as the sun set in shades of gold and pink. Chairs arranged in neat rows faced an archway covered in lilies, Tiana's favorite flowers. But the most extraordinary sight was the flower girl. Clarice Corleone wore a pale pink dress and ballet flats, her dark hair crowned with daisies. She stood at the end of the aisle, a basket of rose petals in her hands, her legs strong and steady beneath her. You ready, baby? Adrian asked, adjusting his bow tie nervously beside her. I'm ready if you are, Daddy. Clarice grinned up at him. Are you nervous about marrying Miss Tiana? Terrified, he admitted, but in the best way. The music changed, a soft piano rendition of At Last, and everyone stood. Tiana appeared at the end of the aisle, and Adrian's breath caught. She wore a simple ivory dress that hugged her curves, her natural hair styled in elegant curls, and she carried a bouquet of sunflowers and lilies. No veil, no train, just Tiana, radiant and real, walking toward him with tears of joy already streaming down her face. Pastor Raymond, who'd flown in to officiate, smiled broadly as he took his place under the archway. But before Tiana could reach Adrian, Clarice stepped into the aisle and began walking. No dancing, down the path, scattering petals with theatrical flair, twirling and leaping like she'd been doing in her twice-weekly ballet classes. The crowd erupted in applause and tears. Dr. Helena Rodriguez, sitting in the front row, openly sobbed with pride. Marcus dabbed at his eyes with his handkerchief. Even Meredith, who'd stayed on as Adrian's assistant and become Tiana's close friend, had to look away to compose herself. When Clarice reached the archway, she turned and gestured dramatically to Tiana like she was presenting royalty. Ladies and gentlemen, my mama, she announced, and the crowd laughed through their tears. Tiana laughed too, a sound of pure joy, and walked the rest of the way to where Adrian waited, looking at her like she'd hung every star in the sky. Hi, he whispered when she reached him. Hi yourself, she whispered back. Pastor Raymond cleared his throat, smiling. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness something I've been praying for since the moment I met Tiana Draper. A love story that proves God's timing is perfect, even when we can't see the plan. He looked at Tiana. 3 years ago, you came to my church broken, homeless, and convinced you had nothing left to offer the world. I told you that God had a purpose for your pain, that he was preparing you for something extraordinary. Tiana nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. And Adrian, Pastor Raymond continued, you came into Tiana's life drowning in guilt and grief, convinced you'd failed everyone you loved. But together, you've built something beautiful from the ashes. You've created a family not defined by blood or obligation, but by choice, by love. He opened his Bible. 1 Corinthians tells us that love is patient and kind. It keeps no record of wrongs. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. That's what I've witnessed in you too. Love that perseveres through darkness. Love that protects the vulnerable. Love that hopes even when the world says there's nothing left to hope for. Adrian and Tiana's eyes never left each other. Now, Pastor Raymond said, I believe the couple has written their own vows. Adrian went first, his voice thick with emotion. Tiana, when you walked into my life, I was a ghost in my own home. I'd lost my way, lost my courage, lost myself. But you, his voice broke. You saw past the broken man to the father who needed to fight for his daughter. You didn't just save Clarice. You saved me. He took a shaking breath. I promise to wake up every morning grateful that you chose us. I promise to be the man who deserves you, even though I know I'll fall short every day. I promise to love you not just in the easy moments, but in the hard ones. When memories of the past try to haunt us, I'll be there to remind you that we've already survived the worst. And I promise that every single day for the rest of my life, I will thank God that He brought you to our door. Tiana was crying openly now, and someone in the crowd handed Clarice a tissue, which she passed forward. Your turn, Miss Tiana, Clarice whispered loudly, making everyone laugh. Tiana wiped her eyes and took Adrian's hands. Adrian, 3 years ago, I lost everything. My home, my dignity, my hope. I slept in my car and wondered if God had forgotten about me. But He hadn't. He was just preparing me for you. For Clarice. For this moment. Her voice strengthened. You asked me once why I stayed when everyone else left. The truth is, I didn't stay for duty or obligation. I stayed because the moment I met Clarice, I saw a little girl who needed someone to believe in her. And the moment I got to know you, I saw a man who needed someone to believe in him too. Adrian's thumb brushed away her tears. I promised to love Clarice as fiercely as any mother could. I promise to stand beside you when the world gets hard again. Because it will. And that's okay. I promise to remind you on dark days that you're not the mistakes you made, but the man you became after them. And I promise that no matter what comes, this family, our family, will always be my greatest joy. Pastor Raymond beamed. By the power vested in me, and with the blessing of this precious child between you, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Adrian, kiss your bride before we all dissolve into puddles. Adrian cupped Tiana's face and kissed her deeply, sweetly, while their guests cheered and Clarice jumped up and down shouting, They're married. My parents are married. The reception was everything a wedding should be. There was dancing. Oh, was there dancing? Clarice pulled Tiana and Adrian onto the floor for the first dance, insisting it be a family affair. They swayed together to What a Wonderful World, Clarice between them, all three crying and laughing at once. Later, Dr. Rodriguez gave a toast. To the little girl who refused to give up, and to the two people who loved her enough to move mountains. Meredith followed. To second chances. To forgiveness. And to the woman who taught me that redemption is always possible. Marcus raised his glass. To the most unconventional family I've ever had the privilege to represent. May your love story inspire everyone who hears it. As the night wore on and guests mingled under the stars, Adrian found Tiana standing by the garden fountain, watching Clarice dance with a group of children from her new school. What are you thinking? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. That a year ago, I never could have imagined this. That the scared, broken woman who walked into this house would become a wife. A mother. A woman with a family who chose her. We didn't just choose you, Adrian murmured against her hair. You chose us first. You chose to stay when you could have run. You chose to fight when you could have given up. You chose love when the world was full of hate. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their daughter twirl in the moonlight. She wants to take ballet seriously, Tiana said. Her instructor says she has real talent. Then we'll get her the best training money can buy. Whatever she needs. Adrian. Tiana turned in his arms. She doesn't need money. She just needs us. She needs a mama who shows up to every recital and a daddy who isn't afraid to cry when she takes her first bow. I can do that. He kissed her forehead. I can absolutely do that. Clarice spotted them and came running, her energy inexhaustible. Mama, Daddy, come dance with me. They're playing my favorite song. Hand in hand, they walked back to the party. A billionaire who'd learned that wealth meant nothing without love. A woman who'd discovered that her greatest treasure wasn't what she owned, but who she loved. And a little girl who'd learned that the truest families are built on faith, hope, and the courage to keep walking even when the ground beneath you disappears. As they danced under the stars, surrounded by people who'd fought alongside them, Tiana looked up at the sky and whispered a prayer of gratitude. for second chances, for healing, for love that transforms, and for the mysterious ways God takes our darkest hours and turns them into our greatest blessings. 2 years later, Clarice Corleone performed her first solo at the Metropolitan Ballet Academy's Spring Showcase. Her parents sat in the front row, holding hands, watching their daughter pirouette across the stage with grace and strength. And when she took her bow, tears streaming down her face, she looked directly at them and mouthed 3 words. I love you. Behind them sat Dr. Rodriguez, Pastor Raymond, Marcus, and Meredith. Their chosen family, their support system, their witnesses to a miracle. Vivian remained in prison, serving 25 to life for murder. Jonathan Prescott faced similar charges for conspiracy and kidnapping. Their schemes had failed. Their darkness had been defeated. And in that theater, as a little girl who'd once been told she'd never walk again danced like she was flying, everyone remembered that love always wins. Always. The end. Thank you for reading this journey with me. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment below with your favorite moment. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will make you believe in miracles. Until next time, remember, your darkest hour might just be the beginning of your greatest story. Love.